what do you make of all of this put together? Lower iPhone sales than forecast, but a higher ASP at a time when we're seeing revenue beat, a great forecast, as well as services revenue continue to grow.
So I think it's good news all the way around. When we look at
despite the iPhone number.
Despite the iPhone number, because if we look at the smartphone market, it's absolutely maturing here in the U.S. We're only going to add about 30 million subscribers in the next 5 years. Most of the growth is coming out of Asia, where we expect to add about 600 million subscribers over the next few years. And so if you look at where Apple needs to be strong to continue on this pace, they're showing growth in the right places.
And Ryan, you pointed out in the break that despite the revenue beat, they actually dropped a rung in the market share chart, but it doesn't matter so much because of the revenue.
Yeah, correct. So we're going to put out numbers today that are going to show Huawei moved into the second place in terms of shipments, but to be honest, like you said, that offsets completely. When you grow ASPs 20%, especially in this market, that's the storyline right there, right? They're beating everyone. So look at even Samsung, right? Their volumes, we saw their earnings last night, but their volumes overall went down about 10%. And their revenues even more so in the mobile division. So yeah, they're growing revenues at a time around iPhone when the market's matured, as Julie mentioned.
Julie, let's talk about the dynamics between what's happening in the U.S. and what's happening in Asia, because what's happening in China is looking good despite all of these political uncertainties that are on the table.
Yeah, so I think, that's part of the story, but I think if we talk about where most of the growth is going to come from, and the next growth markets will be India and Vietnam and Nigeria, the question will be, like he's saying, is can they continue to grow their market share without giving up the profit, right? Because, Apple generates most of the profits in this market, right? They're not buying their way in.
But, Ryan, are you concerned given the president's America First strategy?
Yeah, there has to be concern, right? There's a lot of uncertainty that we don't know, and that's unfolding every day. So we're trying to watch that as close as possible. But I think overall there's uncertainty there. The other piece about the developed markets slowing down, which is where Apple has focused. These other high growth markets like India, like Indonesia, and so forth. Right now, there's no pricing structure in terms of subsidy or financing that really supports Apple's higher ASP. So I believe they're looking at that very closely, and likely they'll come up with some solution, whether that's partnering with telcos or service providers or whatever that might be. But I do think that they're looking at those markets as growth opportunity.
App Store, Apple Music going strong. Take a listen to this from Tim Cook on the call.
Paid subscriptions from Apple and third parties have now surpassed 300 million, an increase of more than 60% in the past year alone. Revenue from subscriptions accounts for a significant and increasing percentage of our overall services business.
Now, beyond this, I want to talk about some of Apple's other bets. And the company R&D spending jumped 27%. What do you think they're spending on?
I hope they're spending it on, making the next generation of products to be more intelligent. Like if we look forward and we look at their core set of products, whether it's wearables or it's smartphones, how good those products are and how attractive they are to consumers are going to depend a lot on just broadly this family of technologies under artificial intelligence. So how good is voice? Like how good is their virtual assistant? Like how good is Siri? And how well can they connect that into an ecosystem of services?
And what about original content? Giving that good original content could buoy sales of Apple TV, for example.
Right. Yeah, the content story is a big one, right? And I think Apple's continued to focus on trying to build their content story, and it's proven to be challenging in some areas, but I don't think they're alone there, right? So I think they continue down that path because when you look at, there's only a few.
They're certainly not alone.
Yeah, and there's only a few major platform players really out there, though, right? So I think it's for them, it's a long story by all means, because I think it's critical.
Tim Cook on the call saying we feel great about our current services, but we're also thrilled about our pipeline of some new services. With the combination of these, we feel good about hitting our objective and even doing a little bit better. What could the new services be? Anyone's guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're unlimited, right? So I think that I have to believe that Apple and all their major competitors are sort of looking at services in many ways, right? There's your current content and what you can sort of get in terms of providers and partners today, but I think they're looking at it more through the lens of what is technology going to bring in terms of tomorrow and the years to come, and how do those turn into more of a service offering, right? And I think that's what we're seeing across the board. I mean, today you can't talk about anything as a service without going through device, platform, you name it down the line. So I would think it's got to be sort of a mix there from them.
We've seen some concern about the Mac number, the lowest quarter for Mac since 2010, and this has been a core product.
Yeah, no, so I think that trend is going to continue. We're not going to see tablets recover, and so it's good to see the news on the wearables and on the watch, but I think one of the things you're pointing out is there's no replacement for the smartphone in the foreseeable future, which then I think makes their dependence on growing that services category of revenue even more important as we look forward.
At a certain point, could services surpass iPhone revenue?
In their dreams.
Yeah, I think it's a long ways off, but I have to also believe that a large part of that R&D is going towards just getting more vertically integrated, right? We've seen every single year they progress in terms of what they're doing around their chipsets and so forth, and I have to believe that's a big strategy for them to get less dependent on component suppliers. Is I think a broader scheme for Apple.
I think one of the challenges a company like this faces going forward as well is the value of their hardware is increasingly dependent upon the value of the services and the third-party ecosystem of devices and services around their product. There's also more that just sits outside of their control. I mean, Apple Pay is more valuable if it's accepted more places, and that's just a slog. That's going to take time for them to get there, and that's not completely within their control.
So Ryan, what are you looking for in the coming quarter? There's a strong forecast, and we're expecting a new family of iPhones, and this family of iPhone strategy seems to be working for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fact that the Q4 numbers for them, Q3 quarter, the guidance was strong, that shows me that they're going to be ready to launch these new products all together at once, around that September, launch timeframe or whatever that might be. Whereas if you remember last year, there was a big gap between when iPhone 8 and iPhone 10 was available, which obviously pushes revenues from one quarter to the next. But that's strong guidance. I have to believe that they're expecting a very strong rollout with plenty of supply.
And the big iPhone 10, whatever it's called, I assume will be a big hit in China.
I think so, yeah. Certainly the larger form factors tend to do well. I'm hopeful.